So here are a couple of projects that I put together using my Quilted Orphan blocks. This one happens to be a sunflower, and when I put this one together, I quilted it with a batting behind, and I just used a straight line quilting around the outside edge, and I'll show you this process here in a moment. I used this product, it's called Halo from Superior Threads, so it's hard to see that thin line of thread that's quilting that. But you'll see this in a moment, how I put this together. So here is one, and I framed it in a frame which I got at Goodwill. All of these frames were anywhere from $2.49 to $3.99, so the frames were very inexpensive. These happened to be white. I did get a number that were black, but I was able to paint them, and so they all, I preferred to have all of them white, and so most of mine are white. Here's another project that I put together. These are two blocks from different projects, actually, and behind each of these orphan blocks is a piece of batting that's the same size. I just laid these together in this orientation, and I use this product, which is called Lisbeth. It's a thread that you can get at Hobby Lobby. It's a little bit thicker than this one, and I simply did a straight line stitching all the way around the outside edge and a straight line stitching here. So this is connected to this larger block right in this section right here. And then I framed it again in the frame. And this is another white frame. So they're beautiful photos that can be used for decor in my sewing room, in my home. They can be given as gifts. So many different uses for your orphan blocks. One other thing I do want to mention is that behind each of these frames, I had to take it all apart, and behind each of these frames I did cut out a white poster board that would fit the frame itself, and then I will finish the back of this frame with this brown paper that you can purchase at Dollar Store, at Hobby Lobby, at Walmart, and so forth, and I'll get that adhered to the back of this to finish this frame, and the other one as well. So now let's look at some of the supplies that I used for this project. I did use batting, which many quilters have quite an excess of that. So I did use pieces of batting that I'm using behind each of the orphan blocks. Here are some of my orphan blocks, and these are just from projects that I had one too many blocks, or maybe two or three too many blocks. Here's one that I'm actually stitching, and I'll show you how that's done here in just a moment. Here's another block. There's another orphan block. And I also have a very tiny orphan block in which I've placed it in a very small frame. It's just a little 4-inch block. And again, this is another one that I got from the Goodwill for a little over $3, and just a cute little frame that I can sit in my sewing room or my quilting studio. Here we have some of the threads that I'm using. This is that Lisbeth thread that I purchased from Hobby Lobby. It works nicely to give a nice thick stitch as you're stitching around the projects. This is a DMC thread, and again, this is Superior. And then of course you can use just regular DMC embroidery thread as well to outline stitch all of your orphans. Now let's take a look at how I did some outline stitching on some of these projects. For this orphan, the background is just a 9 patch with some scrappy squares in there, and I found I had an orphan leaf, which I have also cut out some batting that is the same size as the orphan leaf, and I am simply doing a straight stitch to attach this to the center of this block. I'm using a large eye needle, a tapestry needle, in order for the large DMC floss to be able to fit through there. And very simply, I am just making big running stitches. And you can actually see some of the batting right there. That's behind this leaf. And if that bothers you, you can certainly trim that away. Or when you cut it out, you could cut it out so that it's much smaller than the actual leaf. But as you can see, what I have done here so far is I have done the veins in the leaf, and now I am simply doing an outline stitch all the way around that. And then I will trim up this batting all the way around, and it will be ready to be placed into a frame. So let's find a frame that might work well in. So here is a frame that would work well with the square Orphan block that I have. In fact, I've just finished doing the running stitch all the way around. I think I'm going to do some trimming of this batting on some of the edges here, and I'll just use a very sharp scissors to get in there and trim some of that away so that you don't see that so much. But I think it's just a fun little fall leaf on a 9-patch square, and it's an Orphan block that I'll put in here. And I think it will look very nice in there. So this again is another frame that I purchased at the Goodwill. I think it was around $3 something, and there was a photo in it, so I took this apart. It was like that. I took it apart, and I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to leave this in there so that we have an outline for the project. Let's take a peek and just see what it looks like here. Not bad. I like it. So that is one that would work well in there. I do have some others. I have this one right here. When I cut the batting out, I always cut the batting out a little bit larger, and then I will do my applique, or excuse me, my running stitch around the outside edge, and I might do some simple running stitches in the center as well. And I think for this block, I'll use this DMC floss, which is a similar color to the green that's in the project here. And here's another one, another Orphan block that I have. And for this one, I can use maybe one of these to put around the outside edge. And these again are just DMC floss. And I could actually outline all the way around each of these. I could really have a lot of fun with this as I outline stitch or do a running stitch on these blocks. And actually, any of these three would work well in here. This smaller one might be a bit too small. I'd have to have some additional poster board around it. But these other two should work just fine within here, so I can decide which one I'm going to use in this particular frame. Let's take a look at some others. Before I pull the others in front of me, I just did want to point out, although I cut the batting larger for each of the Orphan blocks, and then I do my stitching, my running stitch, then I trim it up so that the batting matches the block. And you can see that. Now, I haven't actually finished the outside edges on this yet, and I will get that done. But I do want to point out that the batting is trimmed up after the running stitches have been done on each of the Orphans. So here's some Orphans of, they're Orphan blocks of dresses. And this was from a project I had done many, many, many years ago. And I had a couple of these left over. And what I've done for this particular frame is I've taken the dress and folded it in half. And I was able to then place it within that portion of the frame. And it's kind of an interesting look. But there's so many different ways that you can use your Orphan blocks in a variety of different photo frames. So just see what you have available and then start playing with them. Obviously, when you start using each of your blocks, you'll want to, of course, do the running stitch to create that interest and add that texture with the batting. And then you'll also want to trim it up. And not only do I trim away the batting, but there's that fuzzy edge too that you do want to get rid of so that that's not so fuzzy on the outside edges of your blocks. So here's one more frame that I am going to use. I did take it apart and I went outside and painted this white. I used a spray paint, a white spray paint that also had a primer in it. So it works out very well. I'm kind of lazy, so just taking it outside and spray painting it made all of the painting for all of these projects go very quickly. So I will use that. And this one did have one of these old things in there, which, you know, I'm going to toss that away. But I am going to cut out a cardstock, some poster board, I should say, that will fit this. I'll use the cardboard as my template to do that. And then I will be adding these three blocks to this frame. And of course there will be white cardstock behind there. There's often some trimming that's necessary with your Orphan. So these 2 Orphan blocks I've already trimmed up to 6.5 inches. And I'm using a 6.5 inch ruler here, in which I will then trim up this Orphan blocks. And you can see a lot of fuzzy threads and so forth that are hanging off the edges. And it just looks much more neat and tidy once you trim all of that away. So there's 2 sides. Now let's finish the other 2 sides. All right, so we have our 3 blocks ready to go. First, I guess what we will want to do is cut some batting. And I like to cut it a little bit fatter and then trim it down once the running stitches have been done. So I do like to cut my batting pieces a little larger than the Orphan block, and that way I can do my running stitches, and once that's all done, I can trim it away then and remove that so that it's even with the block itself. So here I've got some batting, and we'll finish up these last 2 and get some batting for each of those. All right. So we have the batting for all 3 of these. Now I'm going to take my cardboard and make a template with that for the poster board. So here I'm simply taking the cardboard, which was the backing of that frame, and I'm using it as a template to cut out some poster board because I want a white backing behind my Orphans, and I'll use the scissors and get that cut. I'll be right back. So here's where I am so far on this project. I have this block outline stitched. It's a straight running stitch. I used a red DMC. In fact, I used all 6 strands of the DMC so that it's a nice thick stitch that you can see all the way around. In fact, I might do some more running stitches on the inside. I'm thinking about that and deciding what I might do there. I did trim it up. So it's all trimmed up. The batting is trimmed up even with the edge. And so it's ready to go if I decide to use it just as is. And I'm just starting on the second one. I have the third one to go. I've put the white cardstock or poster board in the frame. So when I get ready to place these inside there, they'll have the nice white frame behind there showing through. And I'm just going to continue stitching and should get done with these here in a little bit, and I'll be right back. So I decided on the blocks that I'm going to do one more line of stitching, a running stitch across the white squares in each of these blocks. And you'll see it's just a simple running stitch that I'm creating here. And nothing about it is perfect. I kind of like how it's organic, very simple. There we go. And I'm just going to do a simple little catch back here to secure it. Now this block I had already squared up, removed the batting is what I mean by that. So now I do need to square up these 2 so that the batting is removed. So let me move this out of the way. Let me get this centered so you can see what I'm doing. I'm using my 6.5 inch ruler. And I'm simply going to square it all up, get rid of the excess batting. These blocks were unfinished at 6.5 inches, hence that's why I'm using the 6.5 inch ruler here. Works out perfectly. So there's another one, so we have 2 of them ready to go. There we go. All right, let's bring this back in the center here. Now I have to decide how I want to place them inside the frame. And I think that's what I'm going to do with my dark triangles going out this way, my polka dot triangles going this way, and these two on the outside edges. So to do that, I'll simply remove the backing again. This is the white poster board that I had cut out. So what I'm going to do is simply lay these on the poster board. And I meant to grab my glue stick because what I'd like to do is get these all laid up here evenly spaced, and then take a little dab of glue stick on the back of them to secure them to the poster board so they don't move when I put the frame together. So let me grab that and I'll be right back. So I believe I have the three of these centered on the poster board the way I'd like them to be. And they're not actually perfect, but they're as near perfect as I'm going to be able to get them. I actually found my Roxanne glue base, which was closer than my glue stick, and so that is what I'm going to use to just make sure that this stays on the poster board without moving. So I'm just putting a few dots down there. Flip this up, I'll put some dots on there. This is simply securing it to the poster board until I get the whole thing put in its frame. And everything will stay in the position where I want it. There we go. Not bad. I like it. It's always so fun to see what you're going to end up with, and I really do like this. This is just a very neat geometric design. These three blocks were actually the inside portions of the Marching Monkeys, the snail's tail block pattern, and I'll be doing that quilt coming up shortly here in the next month. You'll get to see that quilt, but these were leftover orphans from that block. So after I was looking at it here on the table, I realized that I had these two blocks mixed up. I had this one here and this one there, and so I had to remove it, take it apart, and move the blocks because I did want these two at the outside edges. I do see that there is some fuzz that I want to get rid of too, so I'm going to have to remove the backing one more time and just get rid of the pieces of fuzz that I really don't want showing in my photo. But I really like it. I think it turned out very nicely, and I'm really excited to be able to hang an assortment of these in my sewing room and or my quilting studio. Hope that you'll enjoy that as well. So if you have orphan blocks, and most quilters have orphan blocks and orphan pieces, there are so many great things that you can do with those orphan blocks. So today I've just shown you a few picture frames and things that you can do with those, but I will be back to show you more ways that you can use all of your orphan blocks and your orphan applique pieces in beautiful decor for your home, for your sewing studio and your quilt studio. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure that you like and subscribe, and please comment. Let me know what you might make with your orphan blocks. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video with the tutorial on how to use your Orphan blocks in a very creative way. I will link some photos. I didn't actually video when I put this one together, but I do have some photos and I can show you step by step how I put that together in case you're interested in doing something like this with your Orphan blocks. Thanks so much for stopping by, and I sure hope that you'll come back again. Make sure you subscribe so that you get all of my videos as they get posted. Thanks so much. Have a great day.